Hi guys, gals and non-binary pals. この動画は新しいイントロが試してみることにした。そして今日は僕が The Traitor Cormorant について話している。Japanese people, feel free to grade my Japanese down below. Anyway, like I said, today we are talking about one of my favorite series of all time, definitely in my top 5, and that is the Masquerade series by Seth Dickinson that starts with the Traitor Cormorant, then the Monster Cormorant, and then the Tyrant Cormorant. And since I've called the last two titles, my guess for book 4 is that it's going to be called the Savior Cormorant, but somebody guessed in my comments that it might be Martyr, and I think that's a good one too. Anyway, you know a bitch loves her themes. Mama, just give me a thesis statement. That's what I want. It's what the people want, and I want it now, please. And that is the reason why I love this series so much. This is a series that touches on so many themes so brilliantly and poignantly across all 3 books, and this author is just an absolute genius. This series talks about, the big one is obviously imperialism and colonialism, what empire means. We talk about queerness. Our main character is a queer woman. We talk about racism, racial purity, eugenics. We talk about trade and finance. We talk about politics and power. And most importantly, what it takes to gain power, to hold on to power, and to use power. And this series is absolutely brilliant in everything it says about all of this. In the story, we are following a young girl named Baru Cormorant, and she lives an idyllic life on the island country of Terranoke. She lives with her mother and 2 fathers, and her people don't use money at all, so they barter for everything. And so when Falkrest, also known as the Masquerade, because all of its officials wear masks due to it being a meritocracy, when the Masquerade is spotted on the horizon, things definitely change. The ships come and they conquer Baru's people, but they don't do it with force. They do it insidiously with trade and with coin. Until after their fiat notes are introduced on the island, eventually you can't do anything at all without using their money. And then from there, they start building schools where they can indoctrinate these Terranoke children with their very strict and very righteous worldview that they call, their philosophy that they call encrusticism. And so Baru is a very, very, very curious person, and so she goes to the school, and at first she absolutely loves everything. She feels like her whole mind has been opened up to an entirely new world that she never even knew existed. Turns out that she is actually a math prodigy, and she is absolutely loving learning. But then 2 things happen very early on. She learns that queerness is despised, and she finds out that a queer girl from her school has been molested by a male teacher into turning her straight. And along with that, one of her fathers goes missing and is presumed dead, having been killed because of his queer polyamorous relationship. And so Baru very quickly realizes that she doesn't like this empire and that she wants to actually take it down. She wants to tear it down. But she knows, she's smart enough to know that the only way she can do that is from inside the empire and at the very, very top. And so Baru is noticed by this very powerful man called Caroline Farrier. Part of the whole encrustic worldview involves not believing in any sort of monarchy. And so in Felcrest, the emperor is chosen at random by lottery, then he or she is lobotomized and sat on the throne in straitjacket to be controlled by a cabal of very powerful people who've risen up through the meritocracy and are called cryptarchs, and they run everything in secret. And Caroline Farrier is one of these cryptarchs, and he takes Baru on as a protege because she's a math prodigy. Like, do you think protege and prodigy have the same etymology? Like, I feel like a protege is taken on by a patron because they're a prodigy of something. So maybe the words are related. I don't know. Anyway, Caroline Ferrier notices her, and he takes her on as a protege, and as a sort of test or assignment, um, that he gives to Beru, since Beru, she wants to be posted straight to Felcrest so that she can rise through the ranks, but that's not realistic, that's not what's going to happen. And so Ferrier instead sends her to the tumultuous province of Arduin, which is kind of nominally, it's semi-autonomously run by a whole bunch of bickering dukes and duchesses of the province who have long-standing feuds and whatnot, and they are overseen by an imperial governor. And so Beru is appointed there as imperial accountant since she's so good with numbers. But she is there to trace the money and find out what secret plots are going on with these dukes and duchesses, all while trying to stay safe and figure out what happened to her two murdered predecessors. And so I recently reread A Memory Called Empire by Arkady Martin, and I noticed that that book and the Traitor Cormorant are very, very, very similar. And honestly, I don't have a problem with that if Arkady was just super inspired by this. But if you like that book, then you would definitely like this book. And if you like this book, then you should check out the Takes Kalan series by Arkady Martin. A Desolation Called Peace, the second book, actually comes out tomorrow. And I'm maybe like 20% into it, and it's very, very good so far. But I'm going to pick up the audiobook when it gets released tomorrow. But anyway, we are following Beru as she is trying to unravel the mysterious circumstances surrounding her two predecessors' deaths, as well as figuring out what these dukes and duchesses are up to in this very broken province. Beru is one of my favorite protagonists I've ever read. Definitely in like my top 3 female protagonists, probably along with Essun from Broken Earth, Beru, and Phaedra from the Kushil's Legacy series, I would say. But Beru is such an interesting case because she is so driven and she's just so determined, but she makes a lot of decisions that really, really call into question her whole mission and her morals in general and whatnot. Beru is definitely an anti-hero, and you can see that just simply from the titles of the 3 books. You go from Traitor to Monster to Tyrant, hopefully Savior, next book. But she goes from bad to worse, but in such an interesting way that it's honestly really, really awesome to read about. So Beru is trying to gain as much influence and as much power as she possibly can to impress her patron, Caroline Ferrier, so that she can in turn become her own cryptarch to help rule the empire. And once she gets high enough, then her plan is to tear it down. And that is smart, because on her island, after her father dies, her other father and her mother start joining the Terranoki resistance. And they're just a band of rebels fighting in their islands from the mountains against this huge, insurmountable empire that spans continents. And Beru is smart enough to know that that's no way to take on an empire. You have to do it from the top, and you have to do it with policy, or with coup, or dictatorship or something, but you can't really do it by poking it with sticks from the outside. We see her struggle with the encrastic views of the empire. As a queer woman herself, she has to repress that and hide that down deep within herself so that no one can ever find out, because then her ability to gain influence and be respected would be tarnished. And so Beru's hiding a lot of secrets, and as the series goes on, she's hiding secrets from herself. It's amazing. I absolutely love it. This series has everything to me. It has the themes, it has the fantastic characterization, it has very, very good prose, actually. It's super, super poignant and thematic. It says so much. There are so many passages that I honestly actually want to highlight if I reread this book physically. But there are just so many brilliant passages about so many different things. This is a series that has a lot of tragedy a lot of very, very difficult and harsh decisions. Something that I actually, something that I absolutely love about Beru, in a bad way, honestly, is that she is almost delusional in how driven she is, in the sense that she will do anything. And the reason for that is she can justify any future atrocity she commits with the past atrocities she's already committed, because she has all of these people who've died for a cause or that she's killed for a cause. And if she steps off the path, all of those deaths will have been for nothing. They'll have no meaning. And so that forces her to continue. And so walking this path towards treason, to tyranny, towards liberation, if it truly is that, is a path that you either have to never start in the first place, or once you take the first step, you have to finish it, is essentially her thinking. And I can completely understand that. I can totally see why you'd feel like if you killed your best friend, if you killed your mother, if you killed your dog and your whole family for a cause, for a goal, and then you don't succeed with that goal, and so you have to keep trying, it would be very, very hard to stop, because then you would have killed all of those loved ones for absolutely no reason. And so I can see where she's coming from, but this whole logic, this whole process is an Ouroboros of atrocities, and Beru does some very nasty and bad things throughout the series, and it's just very, very exciting but tragic and hard to watch. The titles of the book really say it all. Beru in book one is a traitor to who? That's kind of the question. She's a traitor to the Empire, sure, but is she a traitor to her people for joining the Empire, for siding with them, for allowing their small atrocities so that she can gain enough power to one day eventually end them? Is she a traitor to the people she comes to care about in book one? Is she a traitor to herself? There are just so many questions about Beru's mental state, um, and it's just brilliant to read about. And something that I really like as the series goes on is that in book one, the story is told entirely from Beru's perspective, but she's a bit of an unreliable narrator, especially once she suffers a, I'll just say it, she suffers a head wound in this book, and the ramifications of that head wound are one of the most interesting things I've ever seen. There's a video that I've talked about, and I've showed a clip of it in my channel before. The video is called You Are Too by CGP Grey, and that video is like mind-blowing. But that is definitely brought into the series in book two and book three, and it's just so, so cool to read about. But in books two and three, we get to see the story from other perspectives. We get to follow Yawa at some points, and we get to follow a couple different characters, and they really, really shine light on how Beru has been acting from an outside perspective, and they just shine light on a whole bunch of different things about the story, and that definitely amps things up, getting these different perspectives. So that was actually a very, very great addition as the series continued. The themes honestly just get stronger and stronger as the books go on, and with the end of book three, I am so curious to see where things go. But this is a series that has fantastic characterization. It has really good prose. The world building is really solid. Oh, the pacing is actually good. It's not a super fast-paced book by any means. It's kind of methodical, because it's all political intrigue mostly, though we do have some very good battles throughout the series. But it's mostly political intrigue, and it's just, the pacing is very, very consistent and very good throughout the series, I would say. But something that I forgot to mention actually about the world building is that this series is labeled as fantasy, and while it is, I completely 100% see why it is labeled as that. The series as of book one, and honestly, kind of almost as book three, has no magic. There aren't really any fantastical elements in the series. This book, to me, is more of a speculative fiction novel that's set in a like 18th, 19th century kind of world. They have ships and gunpowder and cannons and whatnot, but it's a world unlike ours, and they've developed very, very differently than our world has. Um, but it's not quite fantasy. There are no dragons. There's none of that. And so if that's what you're expecting going into the book, you would be disappointed. So I'm glad that I remembered to mention that. But this is a book that has so much brilliance in it. It's one of the best things I've ever read. It's right below Vita Nostra and Malazan. It's probably my third favorite. But Traitor is one of the highest. It's a pinnacle of what I think a like perfect successful book is, and it's just an ideal of what I'd like to write one day. And so I really do hope that you guys definitely pick this up, give it a try, and let me know what you think. So that's all I have for you guys today. I hope you guys liked the video, and let me know what you think of the new intro. I think I'm going to say a little bit in different languages every video I do. I'll run through the languages that I know at first, but then after that, I'm going to branch out and venture into languages I don't even speak. And it's going to be bad, it's going to be atrocious and offensive, but you guys will have to correct me down below how I should be pronouncing these things properly. But yeah, it's just something that I thought would be a little bit fun for me to try out. But that's what I have for you guys today. I would appreciate it if you gave the video a like and commented, telling me what you think about the book if you've read it, and if I have convinced you to read it if you have not. But that's all I have for you guys today. Bye.